everyone. I see that we have Seton Hill represented in the house. Awesome. With Rhonda, Carrie, Rosanna, Emily. Nice to see all of you. Thanks for joining us today. And this will actually be a class of mine that you have not seen, any of you, because I never did this as a module anywhere. I did it specifically for this particular talk. And we're going to be talking about an article that I did in the Many Genres book. And I think every single one of you probably have a copy of this at this particular point. I'm going to go to the PowerPoint that I have that will explain everything and kind of give some visual to the lesson. Let me share that with you right now. Okay, there we go. And this is from my article, The Shifting Grail, A Quest for a Good Read. And of course, I couldn't have done this book without my co-editor, Dr. Michael A. Arnzen, which all of you know. And it would have been funny if we could have gotten him here today, but alas, he is off doing other things, probably horror type things at this point. And of course, it's for Seton Hill University, which all of you are really familiar with at this point. And the articles, 65 different authors, including all of these wonderful people, which I know all of you know, probably personally at this point. So your characters want it. Your readers want to see how far your characters will go to get it. It is a grail. And this is a big one for me because when I was writing this article, I thought about how do I plot, because I had to learn to plot while I was at Seton Hill, because otherwise I had this just rambling manuscript. Not Monty Python, what can I do about grails? And these aren't the Cup of Eternal Grails, though Templar stories have almost become their own genre nowadays. And like vampires, these tales will never die. And just to show you, here is a nice example of a bunch of Templar novels that are out there. And of course, that very last one is indeed, yes, a vampire Templar series. So I kind of just like to tie everything together. And you will find throughout this entire presentation, I'm really proud of this, and it was kind of coincidental. Most of the covers have some type of red or black in them in some way. And of course, we know that thrillers are very much like that. And much of what I based this on was thrillers, but not all of them. And I will admit too, if I saw a particular cover that I could choose between, I would end up choosing the one that was red over any other color, just to keep continuity. And it says the grail that we're concerned with here is a goal, the ultimate goal, the one possession, love, or desire that your character wants so badly, you've devoted 400 pages to help her reach it. This driving power is true of all popular fiction. And it's the idea of, even if it's a glass of water, your character needs to want something. And of course, it's that something that allows the story to unfold. We're going to look at Stephen King's It. So think about this. What's the grail in It? And even with some of these that have multiple characters, we're still looking, in most instances, for an all-encompassing, overarching grail concept for the entire novel. In this case, conquering childhood fears. So that's the big overarching grail for everyone in the book, conquering childhood fears. At The Devil Wears Prada, what's the grail for this one? A little different because we're not in the speculative realm anymore, not in the thriller realm. Pleasing an impossible boss. And this, again, is overarching because you have several characters that feel the same need besides just our main character. And then Arthur C. Clarke's 2001: A Space Odyssey, which of course, this started out as a film. This is actually a novelization of the film, but Arthur C. Clarke had a lot to do with the film in the script. So I was okay with putting this in here. Discovering the secret of the monolith. So that gives you an idea that something that is not even tangible at first still can be a grail. It's that idea of that something that they need to know, they need to understand, they need to have. So think about this. What's the grail in your book? And take a minute to actually think about that, the current, and if you're not working on an entire book, if you're just working on a story, take a minute to just kind of like jot that down and think about the big grail, the overall goal, the one thing that either the main character or even a group of characters wants more than anything. Just kind of jot that down, because you'll be able to do like a little exercise going along the way as we do this. A good believable grail should be evident to your readers immediately, because character motivations provide the foundation for a gripping plot. So don't keep it from the reader what the grail is. Even in mysteries, obviously the grail of mysteries is to find out who did it, or to solve the mystery if it is not some type of a murder mystery. So the grail needs to be right up front so that readers are in on it, even if the characters themselves aren't quite in on it yet. The readers want to be. And looking at Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park, what's the overarching grail for Jurassic Park? This was an easy one. Getting off the island before the hurricane hits. First, it has nothing to do necessarily with the dinosaurs themselves. They want to get off the island because the hurricane is going to hit, and it's going to mean that they can't take the ferry off of the island for however many hours afterwards, or maybe days, depending on how bad the hurricane is. And when other goals stumble in the character's way and need immediate action, look out, the grail shifts. And this is actually what the book is more about. Even more so than the goal itself, it's all of these distractions that get in the way. So, distraction in Jurassic Park. The power goes out to the dinosaur paddocks. Remember, the original grail was they got to get off the island before the hurricane hits. Well, now the power goes out to the dinosaur paddocks. So the new grail, avoid the dinosaurs. So now, before they can get off the island, they have to avoid the dinosaurs in order to get off of the island. So you can see where this starts to like build and build and build. Possibilities for reader engagement have just expanded tenfold, because now that you've thrown this distraction in the way, there are so many things that you can do to keep your characters from reaching their original goal. And again, that's the story. It's the journey. Dr. Grant rides the rapids to escape the T-Rex. And this is obviously from the book, not in the movie itself. So in the first Jurassic Park book, Dr. Grant had to actually get in the rapids to escape the T-Rex. I like my books like I like my cars. Automatic. What's with all the shifting? Yes, I try to be really funny. Can you tell? Straightforward plot progression works well for some stories. However, getting a character from point A, which is their desire, to point B, which is the achievement, may involve first stopping by points C, D, and E, maybe even F, G, H, and so on and so forth. All of those little stops along the way are what keep us reading. Again, it's the journey that is the novel, not the ending. What your characters desire may change as your story progresses. Internal and external conflicts serve to distract your characters and precipitate a shift in focus, just like we saw with Jurassic Park. Both types of distractions result in the same idea. Your characters now have to resolve this, a lesser grail, before they can achieve that original main grail. So you can throw distractions in that are external conflicts, like we did whenever the power went out with the dinosaur paddocks. But you can also throw in internal conflicts. And these can be whether a character is having a grip on their conscience, for instance, of whether they should continue on the path in which they're heading. We're going to look at Robert Ludlum's The Bourne Identity. And again, I took most of it from the book, although it does figure pretty closely to what the movie adaptation was as well. The main grail in The Bourne Identity, finding out who he is. He wants to find out his identity. That's essentially what the entire book the main arc. That was the central idea originally. But he has all of these distractions, and these are just 3 of many that are in there, but I felt that we needed something reasonable to look at, so I just chose 3. They have secret government assassins that are trying to keep him from doing this. There's a love interest who inadvertently is keeping him from doing this, and the guilt of a bloody past. So you can see those external, the government assassins, the internal, the guilt of a bloody past. And then the love interest is both external and internal, because if he didn't really have feelings for her by the end, then things may not have been so much of a distraction as what they were. Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child's Thunderhead. This is one of my top 5 books actually ever. I really love Preston and Child in general, and I always kind of like choose then if they have a giant series like Lincoln and Child do, I choose kind of one, or Preston and Child do, I choose one that I kind of want as the representative book, and I chose Thunderhead. So the Grail of Thunderhead, if you're not as familiar with this particular one, it's learning what happened to Nora's missing father. Nora's the main character, in uncovering a great archaeological find. And obviously, those of you who know me, I have a background in anthropology and archaeology, so that's why I really love these books. The distractions that were given in Thunderhead are skinwalkers. Again, a love interest, you're gonna kind of see a pattern there, and a flooding slot canyon. So again, we have those internal and external distractions that are all lining up to keep Nora from her original goal. What are 3 distractions to shift the Grail in your book? So remember what you had written down what your original Grail was. So think about just 3. You might have a lot more like most of these other books did, but think about the 3 biggest distractions, have at least one of them be internal and at least one of them be external. And then you can have the third one either be a combination of the 2 or one or the other. So take just a minute to think about that and just jot it down. I could play some kind of fun, funky music, but you don't want to hear that. So. Won't too many girls spoil the plot? By placing secondary and tertiary grails in your characters' paths, you not only increase tension and anticipation, but also provide mounting satisfaction as these lesser goals are attained. So not only are you keeping the reader engaged, but you are helping them feel like they are part of the story and that things are getting done, even if it is not that original goal. Because let's face it, if they hit that original goal immediately, you just didn't have a story. You just have a concept, and then someone told you, oh, it worked out. The increase in tension and anticipation is a big one, because that's not just for suspense novels. That should be with any good fiction. And that's why I have told many of my students, you want to end your chapters on that beat of a cliffhanger. You want to create the anticipation, you want to create the tension so that it can be something that whenever the reader gets there, they're like, I have to go to the next chapter. I was ready to go to bed, but no, now I have to keep reading. Or at least if they can't keep reading right then, that all they think about is getting back to that book. And that is part of the mounting satisfaction, because you're giving them something that's going to stir their curiosity, and then you're going to have a small payoff so that by the time that they get to the big payoff, they have already had a little bit of expectations met along the way. It reassures the reader with the idea your characters were able to resolve this, even through such harrowing ordeals, so they will be triumphant in achieving that when things are at their worst. So, okay, if they were able to get through this, then I feel good that they're going to be able to get through that, and now I want to see how they're going to do it. Going back to Jurassic Park, Dr. Sattler restores the power in Jurassic Park even when velociraptors are breathing down her neck. So that was just a small thing to overcome. I mean, it was huge in respect that she needed to get that back on, but compared to the main goal, she's still pretty far away from that. But because we see that she was able to do this even amongst all of the velociraptors, then we're like, okay, she stands a chance. They all stand a chance in order to get out of there. And it gives you that thrill, but it also reassures you and gives you the satisfaction of seeing a win and knowing that, okay, now we can go for the big win later. Which of the three of your distractions is your reassuring distraction? And if you don't have one that is a reassuring distraction, now will be a time to add one, because you have to make sure you're reassuring the reader at least a little bit in order for them to stick with you. They can't feel that it's completely hopeless. Regardless of what we read in Saramago. So. Or if the challenge is too harrowing, it worries the reader that your character barely survived this. How will he manage that when the circumstances seem impossible? So again, you're not making them feel hopeless, but you are showing them, okay, there's a possibility that this could really go sour by the end. And back to Jurassic Park for that. When Crichton maims Ian Malcolm halfway through the book, you're like, wait, he's a main character. You are taking him like out of the action, and you have made him so vulnerable because he cannot take care of himself at any point. So that immediately puts you in the mind frame of anything can happen to any of these characters that I care about at any time. And Ian still may not make it off of the island. So I thought that was pretty great. Jurassic Park, I think, is just like a great study for so many things, especially in thrillers and plotting and so forth. So which of your three is your harrowing distraction? And again, if you don't have one, now's the time to be thinking of one and jotting it down there. And it is probably good to note that the harrowing distraction can be a complete defeat, but it does not necessarily have to be. It probably should be something that is almost like a half win. Like the Ian Malcolm thing, he was able to escape the T-Rex at the time, but he did not get away unscathed and is now in even more of a dire situation than what he was before. So take a minute to think about your harrowing distraction. Some of these lesser grails are like rungs on a ladder. They aid the characters in reaching their main goal. So in other words, each grail helps the reader get closer and closer to the main goal, as well as helping each of the characters get to where they need to go. The example in the Bourne Identity is finding one of many passports in a safe deposit box leads Bourne to his apartment in Paris and to another clue about a particular hotel room. So he is on his way, One of the distractions is, okay, now I have all these passports, and okay, well, this one says that I had an apartment in Paris. So he goes there, and it seems like it's a tangent, but actually it's allowing him to keep building on all of his clues and building on his main grail at this point. For Thunderhead, Nora discovers that the Anasazi treasure of gold was really maize, leading her to an ancient granary. So again, she is finding out clues. They may not have been what she originally expected, but they were still clues that are leading her basically in a straight line toward her end goal. So now think about how does one of your distractions aid the quest for the main grail? Looking at all of them. And again, if you don't have one that is actually directly linking it to there, that's when you can add one in. You can see how you're actually starting to build this beautiful plot outline as you go along by throwing in these distractions. So you got point A and you have point B, but it's everything that you need to have that's in between, A.1, A.2, so on and so forth. So take a minute to think about that and look at that. But some lesser grails stand in direct opposition to the main goal, forcing characters to rethink their original motives and make agonizing choices. And this is always, I think, the clever one, the tough one, because if you have something that derails the original goal, you had better make it good. An example, Bourne identity. Bourne may not find out his name, but by saving the woman he loves, he discovers who he is. So we look at the fact that he had these distractions that helped him, and then the one distraction being the love interest actually gives him more of a fulfillment. And you could say that in a way, at least symbolically, he did reach his main grail. But of course, if you're speaking figuratively or literally rather, he did not, but he does discover who he is. But for most readers, they're okay with it. They're worth it because it was his journey that showed him essentially who he was. In Thunderhead, Nora explores the ultimate dig site, but finds more satisfaction with the living than the dead. And again, this actually comes back to the love interest as well. So love interest are those things that I think we have come to expect, especially in the literature that we have today, Western literature especially, that if there's going to be anything that's going to change a character, it is going to be true love, or it's going to be that idea of love in one respect or another. Now, does one of your distractions oppose the main grail enough to change it completely? And this is one that you have to really look at and really think about. And you may not find this distraction until you are ready to write the very end. Or you may decide that you don't need that particular distraction. Like you may very well have a fantastical quest that there is going to be something that is going to end that. And one of the other examples that I could have used, but I didn't want to start overwhelming with examples, was, of course, Lord of the Rings. And the fact that at the end, Frodo does deliver the ring, destroys it, so on and so forth. But he is also changed by the ordeal so completely that even though he gets to go and live out his very long years with the elves, he is not the same person that he started out to be. And so therefore, his main grail of settling down in the Shire and having a happy life, taking over Bilbo's little hobbit hole, that's never ever going to come to pass now. So you kind of have to look at that is, would we have had a story that was as good if he would have gotten to go back to the Shire or not? I don't know. I'm not putting my opinion out there. I'm just kind of stating it. Ultimately, sometimes what the characters wanted all along doesn't matter as much as what they find along the way. And just like in life, a good read isn't so much about the end, it's about the quest. It's absolutely about the journey. So hopefully you have your nice little quick script as to what all your distractions are going to be, what your lesser grails are, what your main grail is, and have some ideas of how that story is going to unfold and how the character, depending on how they respond to each of these distractions, you're going to get the characterization that you need along the way as well. Okay, I think we are about ready for questions and sharing. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share screen so that I can come back to see everyone. Awesome. And hi, Stacy and Marks and Jared. Nice to see all of you. All Seton Hill people.
Well, they should be here to support you. I'm glad. Great job, everybody. Yeah, so we don't have any questions, and that's probably because you covered everything that people could possibly wonder about. So great job there. If you have any questions again, go ahead and type them into the chat bar there. Again, to pull up the chat, you can click down on the bottom of your menu bar there, and there's a little speech bubble icon, and you can click on that, and it'll pull up the chat there to the right. So if you've got any questions, put them in there. And if you think of some questions later, how would they contact you, Heidi?
They all have my email.
I would hope so.
Yeah, they all do. And I'll probably be seeing quite a few of them during one of our write-ins as well. And
Great.
hi, John just joined too.
Yes. So we do have a question. This is from Carrie. What if your book has multiple POVs? Should you have different main grails and secondary grails for each POV character?
You know what? I think you can. In most of the examples actually that I showed you, especially like Jurassic Park is multiple POV. Bourne Identity, if I recall, was not so much multiple POV because it was mostly from Jason Bourne's POV. They may have gone into the villain's POV. I can't remember now. It's been a while since I read it. If you have one overarching main grail for everyone, or the concept, like the book having, like in Arthur C. Clarke's, that everyone would find out what the monolith was about, but everyone also had, like, each character in there had their own grail that they were trying to find. I think you can make it very interesting. And again, what you could do is split each of those characters into their own little scripts, so that, okay, I'm going to have 3 distractions for this character and 3 distractions for that. And then what gets really fun, in my opinion, because I do this a lot, you can end up starting to interweave everyone's grails together. Like this character, whenever they have this distraction, it's going to end up, however they solve that goal, is going to affect another character and eventually bring them together. I love to do, in my work, I love to take a bunch of these multiple POVs, and I have, at any given time, my rule is I usually have 3 different things going on in the story at the same time, and they all end up merging and threading together by the end, so that everything that maybe looked like they were just disparate parts are actually going to come into a whole and have that idea for the reader, like, oh my gosh, okay, so that's how this affected this, and so on and so forth. I do that with my novels all the time. It's just the way that I have learned to think, and I think it's because I read so much in the way of science fiction and thrillers before I actually started Seton Hill myself, and then I just had to hone how to plot once I was there, and I did that with my thesis novel. And then I kind of used that as a pattern ever since then. So that's why whenever I knew that I was going to write the article, the Shifting Girl article for many genres, before I knew about any of the other articles, because I was like, this seems to almost be a template for me in the way that I work. But I think it's an open-ended enough template that you can use your creativity any way that you want, and you can change it if you need to along the way. Like if something is just not working out, then you can go in and you can like change some of those distractions to kind of fudge everything the way that you need to have it go toward the end. Thanks, Carrie.
Are there any more questions? Well, I don't think so right now. Thank you, Heidi. You did a wonderful job.
Thanks for hosting me, Kathy.